Did you all get the prompt?
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you all for joining us this Friday for our final career exploration workshop of the 25-26 academic year. My name is Erin Cantrell. I am the director of the Donito Career Center and Alumni Relations, and I'm very honored to bring in these social work professionals working in with somatic work. This is kind of a first of ours, kind of panel style for this. So um, I'll have them introduce themselves and we'll get started. So I'm gonna call on Myra if you want to introduce yourself. You can share name, um, what year that you graduated, and where are you working now? Oh, just do you need a minute? I can pass it to someone else. Yeah, okay, great. So I'll pass it to Thad Fry.
Great. Awesome. Well, very excited to be here. And I am a proud alum of UT School of Social Work. I have my LCSW. I graduated in, gosh, 2001. So somewhere in that ballpark anyway. Now live back in Boulder, Colorado, where I was born and raised. And I have two businesses. So I worked actually for hospice for a long time. I was a direct social worker working with folks who were declining and then passing, and then working grief services. But now I just have my private practice business that is working with individuals called Thad Fry Counseling. And then I have another one called Performance Brain Spotting, which is where I work with athletes and musicians and other performers. So that's me. Excited to be
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, Myra, are you ready? I saw you came off mute. There's a little bit of a lag. Okay. Um, well, Myra, when you get your mute off, I'll just jump to you, but I'll pass it along to Zach.
Hi, my name is Zach. I graduated from UT with my master's in 2015, and I did my final internship at the Safe Alliance, providing community counseling to supporters of domestic sexual violence, human trafficking, um, and I worked there for many years until I opened my private practice, Zach Patent Therapy, creative name. Um, and I do that as well as doing some ketamine assisted psychotherapy through my friend Grace, who's also a UT
Grace, who's
alum,
off.
2015. And I work for UT at the Center for Psychedelic Research and Therapy, essentially kind of facilitating safe psychedelic experiences for participants in the psychedelic clinical trials that are happening here on at the Dell Medical School.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zach. Okay. And last but not least, Myra.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. It was on unmute, but I'm not sure why the sound wasn't going through. But yeah, my name's Mayra Hernandez. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, board approved supervisor, and a somatic experiencing practitioner. I graduated from UT in 2007. I got both my bachelor's and my master's there at the School of Social Work. And right now I am working with the Employee Assistance Program. And so providing counseling to all staff, retirees, and faculty from the university.
All right. Thank you. So, can you all share a bit about your path into somatic work? What drew you to it, and how did your social work training shape the way you approach it? Whoever would like to jump in first, we'll do popcorn style.
Sure, I'll jump in this time. Let's see. So, background again, I worked in hospice for almost 20 years. And so the great majority of that time was working with individuals after their loved ones passed away. And so there was no solution, right? There was no solution for grief. Grief is an ongoing piece and a very natural human experience. But having insight alone uh, was not enough for a lot of people, and no matter how their loved ones passed away, often there was a traumatic lens that they were looking through. So uh, finding something more, something that was going to work with their nervous systems, something that was going to work with their felt sense in their body, definitely felt like that was needed. And when I was exploring that, I was looking at different options like EMDR, somatic experiencing, both which I respect greatly, but that's where I found brain spotting, and it was kind of a younger modality, and had pretty good foothold here in Boulder, and was able to find some classes, and so that's the background in that, and then having a background in social work, I think allowed me to do my hospice work, which allowed me to do somatics works, which is really not being overly directive, not having to find the answer, really going in depth, making a lot of space for a person to really show up. Um, I loved the work that I got to do because I got to be quiet with people and really let them go internal and not knock them up to their thinking brain. And I think, again, social work allowed me to really be present for people rather than being directive. So I think that helped a lot.
Thank you. And for those of us that are, the brain spotting is something that we've never heard of. Like, how would you describe that in a sentence or two?
Gosh, a sentence or two. If EMDR and somatic experiencing had a baby, it would be brain spotting. But really, it is around allowing from where do you feel something in your body? So, feeling activation in your body, finding a fixed eye position. So, just where you're looking affects how you feel and allows access to our limbic brains, our midbrains in our bodies. So basically, I tell my clients to take off your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, set it down next to you. It'll come back, but just to allow your felt sense and your history and what you're holding in your body and that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn role, and just let yourself go with that. So that's my quickest version. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Who else would like to go?
Yeah, I can jump into it, Erin. I think the way that I'd like to share my experience is from a student perspective, just knowing that, there's a lot of students here and I can share how I came across somatic experience and my journey with that was actually when I was getting ready or when I graduated with my master's in social work and preparing for the licensing exam. I don't think we talk enough about the stress that, test anxiety, the stress and anxiety of what am I going to do once I graduate and what happens right after I graduate? Well, there's still an exam because if I don't have the exam, am I going to get hired without the licensure? And so I think just experiencing all of that stress and, I didn't take any courses or there wasn't any offerings back then of how to manage that stress, how to manage the stress that comes with the anxiety of what is life after graduation going to look like. And so I failed that exam like two or three times, the number of times that you're allowed to fail. Like I failed that exam. And it was all due to, again, just kind of like the logical stuff that's happening in the brain, the anxiety, the overactive mind, and not knowing how to control it because the more you think about it, the more tangled up you get into it and you just seem to fall into this spiral. And it wasn't until I started kind of letting go. I think Chad, you said that letting go of that logic piece of the brain, putting it to the side and just really getting in touch with getting familiar with anxiety. Like, I'm just going to become friends with you. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to get to know how you show up in my body. Why is it that I paralyze? Like, I feel paralyzed the day that I'm going to take the exam. Why is it that my stomach starts hurting? I have a fever over 101, just the days of the exam. And so I started doing the training. It's a 3-year program. And in those 3 years, it's like three different sessions. You have to do personal consultations, professional consultations. And in the personal consultations, that's when I started addressing just all the anxiety that I was experiencing from, in taking this exam. I love it so much. And just being aware and in tune with your body, trusting that your body is so full of wisdom. And when you just take the time to listen to it, become aware without judgment and compassion, just the healing starts, right? And so as soon as I started with that process, it wasn't even a year of finished SE when I retook the exam, passed it. I cannot describe just how at peace my body felt, calm my nervous system felt, and just like I didn't have an ounce of anxiety or, just a feeling of doubt. Like it was at peace.
Oh, you're cutting out. Let's see. Okay. Well, as we're waiting for her to get back online, Zach, do you want to pop in?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a theme here. Yeah, so my path into somatic work came through kind of via meditation, and my path into meditation came through suffering, my own personal suffering. And I'm being a very cognitively oriented, kind of like intellectualizing person from that sort of family dynamic, and realizing like, hey, this is really not working for me. Um, and just kind of out of in some ways desperation, seeking something differently, seeking something different. And um and through meditation I kind of developed an interest in like, wow, there's so much going on, so much more going on in my body, than just my thinking mind and brain and thoughts, and kind of what happens when I learn how to tune into that, versus just kind of thinking about my problems. And kind of like, just like Tad said, it's like a lot of most people have a lot of insight about what their issues are, and somehow, that's not, we still have a lot of the same problems. So kind of what does that mean for kind of where the work is? And so through meditation, I learned about just the all the different therapy modalities that essentially integrate different forms of mindfulness and experiential practices into the therapy world. And so that drew me to somatic experiencing work, which I'm trained in that, and something called the Hakomi method, which is another somatic practice that is in some ways very similar to somatic experiencing, but in my opinion, kind of addresses more kind of like developmental trauma, which is kind of my area of specialty, and even EMDR, kind of that kind of in a very that one to me feels like the most like um, cognitive of the experiential therapies in some ways. Um, but yeah, it just opened up a whole world of all the different somatic practices. And I think it was in Tammy Linseisen's attachment class where a guest speaker really kind of um, connected some dots for me around the importance of somatic work when working with complex trauma or developmental trauma. And I connected with a therapist who did that work and did the training on my own body and my own nervous system as I was going through the social work program. And so it was a kind of the intellectual education of the practice or of the program, and then my own embodied education of being a client of a somatic therapist.
Thanks. And so you all pretty much touched on kind of like my second question, which was, if for students who may be new to the term somatic work, like what does that mean? And, obviously it's, connecting with that, how you're feeling things in your body. Um, But let's kind of jump ahead. Like what are some what does a somatic approach look like in a typical session with you? Can you walk us through that? Like what that would look like for a client?
Um, I mean, I'm curious what Tad's answer will be, but the short answer is no. I can't walk you through it because it's so different for each person. And I'm going to give that annoying therapist answer, which is like, it depends, right? Because it depends so much on, um, like the person's level of regulation coming in to the session or even the therapy in general. It depends what their kind of internal and external resources are. It depends on whether they have heard of somatic work before. And and so it can very vary. Some people are kind of like, you come in and they have a clear, like they're already somatically connected, and you don't have to do much education or explaining or kind of dipping a toe in, because it can be very overwhelming for someone who has never felt their body to be like, okay, now let's spend a session trying to be in your body. That is generally bad. That is not that is not that does not really typically lead to success in terms of, it can be too much. So a lot of somatic work is really about listening to the person's kind of history in a nervous system context of like, okay, what, like how does their body regulate? What are the tools that work for them, and harnessing that moment to moment um, in the session. And so some people can go really deeply really quickly because they already have kind of like the nervous system scaffolding of like, okay, they know how to regulate themselves, they know how to identify when they're activated or triggered. And some people have no concept of that yet. And that doesn't mean they'll never find it. It just means like that's where the work starts, of like the resourcing and helping people identify one sensation or one emotion and locate it in their kind of in a part of their body, or even locating kind of feeling, okay, what does good feel like to you? People say like, oh, I feel good, but good has a million different, it's an umbrella that has so many different emotions and sensations under it that oftentimes people have no clue what they're really feeling when they feel good. Well, yeah, I'm curious, Tad.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, so love the, like as you were saying, Zach, I hear a lot of as you both were saying. I think we're repeating ourselves, which is a positive thing here as well, which is the annoying thing of it depends is what we laugh about in brain spotting trainings because it does depend. And so, just as you were talking about, really, we meet the client where they are. And I know that might be true in every modality. I at least hope it is, whether it's cognitive or somatic, but we really are listening through a somatic and nervous system lens. And so, what are they bringing in? How do they talk about their body? Is there connection? Their noticing of themselves? Are they disassociated? And a lot of people are. I tell clients sometimes I feel like I was just a head walking through the world. A lot of my lived experience before I did my own brain spotting and other, I've done psychedelic work as well. And in doing those, I feel much more connected to myself. And I share that little bit just to normalize it and talk about how disassociation is actually a good thing. May not be something we want forever for somebody, and we want them to be eventually to be able to come into their body and eventually, hopefully, this is a tough word, but feel safe. But it is not assumed that they do, and that it's going to take some time and it's going to take some processing from that somatic lens to be able to come into the body. Disassociation happens because we are in overwhelm, and it's making us feel as safe as we can feel in a very usually unsafe environment. And so all that to say, I guess I'll do a quick version of what it could look like if somebody were ready to process and maybe they came in and they knew about brain spotting or they've done it before, EMDR, somatic experiencing, or Haikomi, and they have some level of connection with their body. A lot of athletes I work with do, some don't because they have to disassociate from themselves. But let's say they're wanting to work on an issue like anxiety. I would just say, just as Zach was talking about, okay, what does anxiety mean to you? I know what it means to me, but I don't want to overassume. Where are you feeling that in your body? what does that feel like? We usually ask them to rate it on a scale of subjective unit of distress. So I feel that anxiety in my stomach. Okay, awesome. We notice what that feels like. Scale of 0 to 10, 0 meaning I don't feel it at all, 10 feels like I feel it overwhelmingly. How much are you feeling it? Whatever their answer is the correct answer because it's subjective. And then we help them find a fixed eye position. So again, that could be either I'm noticing, I'm working with Erin and I notice when she's talking about stuff, she's looking in a certain direction. I might point out, hey, I'm noticing you're looking up into your left as you're sharing that with me. What would it be like if you rested your eyes there and noticed that feeling in your stomach and see where it would go? That's one way of doing it. Another way to do it is that we literally use a pointer so that I don't have to sit here and have my finger going across and burn out my shoulder because I do this 5 to 8 times a day. But we go across their field of vision very slowly to notice where they look affects how they feel, and I'm noticing reflexes of that person that might be telling part of the story, and then we stop in that eye position and let the magic happen, as it were. So that's one quick version of it, just to give you a sense.
All right. Myra, can we call on you? Are you able to think you're still on mute? Or if you're able to, you know, drop something in the chat. Um, let's see. Or maybe I can unmute you. Let's see. Ask to unmute. Did that work? Okay. That's good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Yes. So I think for me, the way that it looks like, once the person has been informed, they have done the work and they're ready. One of the things that I really like again about somatic experiencing is that there's not a lot of words that they have to put into it, but just trusting that it's going to come out from their bodies. And one of the things that I recall, for example, a car accident, if we've been working around the car accident, we've built the internal and external resources for safety. A lot of times, folks, when they're just sitting, noticing, becoming aware of their sensations, their hands may do a certain gesture. And so, the important thing with somatic experience is the insertion of time. In a car accident, you don't have time. It just happens all of a sudden, out of your control. So, allowing the insertion of time in the session, they're able to play out what their body would like to have done in that moment. And a lot of times we see folks putting their hands up and encouraging them to do that in a slow movement and just noticing how they're blocking or what the protective factor would have been during the accident and just noticing that. Notice shaking, we call that release, right? Allowing them to notice the shake, holding the space for them, the tears, the sweating, the shakiness, burping, really helping them name that as like that's a discharge. That discharge that the body is doing from whatever happened in the event that was stored and they weren't allowed to release it now in a safe space.
Thank you. So how do you all assess when somatic modalities are a good fit for a client? Are there situations where you would proceed with more caution or use a different approach? Because as you all say, it depends, right? Every session is going to be unique to that client.
I'll just jump in to get us rolling. But the joke I've heard is if somebody has an active nervous system, then they can do brain spotting. So meaning if they're alive. So that could be an overgeneralization, obviously. But I think the beauty in somatic work, any of the ones that we're talking about, is that that eventually, depending on relationship and looking at some of the other things that we'll share that can be that we need to be aware of with people, it can be of great benefit to do somatic work. I would say it does a hell of a lot more than most cognitive work does, and that's coming from somebody who did a lot of cognitive work prior to being in this part of my profession. So some of the things that I noticed, and again, we have a larger lens, which is what to be cautious of, and then through our own lens, I noticed that working with folks around personality traumas can be a little more difficult for folks with brain spotting. Some CPTSD, I'm definitely going to walk in more cautiously, and any of these things can be worked with. I think it really is about jumping into the relationship and building up over time awareness of the body. And that's a lot of what I do with anybody, but especially with people that I'm going to be a little more cautious with, is both in the session itself, which I heard both folks talking about, and between sessions. I do a lot of your homework is not to do something different and have a behavior change or think differently. If that comes along, that's great, but is to notice. And so, how do we notice differently? So, just as I heard Zach talking about, like if you feel happy, awesome. Tell me about what did you feel? What did you feel? Did you feel that smile on your face? Did you feel lightness in your body? When you felt sad, when you felt angry? I know it can sound simplistic, but it's not, because people overgeneralize, well, that's more of a thought than a feeling. And so I have them practice in between sessions. So if somebody can be in tune with themselves, that usually gets them in the door. But again, looking at trauma histories is a big part of it. And then working with people that are in any kind of active mania, obviously would be something that I wouldn't utilize this modality with, at least not at that time.
Yeah, just adding to that. I mean, on a basic level, I think the easiest way to assess whether a somatic modality is a good fit for a client is what they tell you about their experience of it. I think, I mean, to back up, I think it's other than the kind of examples that Tad just mentioned, it's not about whether people are a good fit for it. It's where you start with the kind of the level of readiness, and do you start with identifying and feeling emotions and sensations for a second at a time before going back into your head, or do you start by kind of getting to know someone in a couple sessions and being like, oh yeah, they're like really ready for this deeper work. But kind of aside from that, kind of what I said at the beginning was just like some people will be like, no, I don't like this, I don't want this, this isn't for me, and that's that's not our job to convince them of that. It just means like, oh yeah, great, like this isn't the right fit for you. You don't maybe you don't want to come out of that cognitive space for your own kind of internal safety reasons, or maybe you're just looking for something more behavioral, more kind of really directly outcome based. Not that this work isn't outcome based, but it's a different path that is not as much kind of clearly laid out prefrontal cortex route, and so people may just want something different from that. But overall, I think there's very few people who are kind of just clearly not a fit for this type of work.
All right. So in terms of, we'll kind of backtrack in terms of like training and certifications, like what, can you talk more about, your individual trainings and, what was the process? Like, how did you find out about that training? Um, and how has it been most formative beyond your MSSW program?
I can go first this time, Tad. You've been jumping in. Yeah, so I mentioned um, where to start with this. I guess what I'll say is like the clinical social work program at UT like prepares you for the very basics of like effective counseling in this if you want to be a therapist. And that's not a knock on the program. It's just a more of a like, okay, you have the foundation and there's literally 10,000 different directions you can go based on what the kind of what you're interested in, who you want to work with. And so it's up to you to kind of make the education process your own after you graduate, which can also be kind of um, frustrating and aggravating news to learn that the you're at the beginning rather than at the end. But for me, that education came working in my internship at SAFE, which was already there were already a lot of somatically oriented therapists. So there was freedom for me to bring that kind of bring my own interest in that and learn from other people, and even get some trainings paid for, subsidized. So at that time, I did a somatic experiencing training, just kind of helping educate myself about the nervous system and all the different responses that a person can have to traumatic events, and just really there's the education of it, and then there's the seeing it in practice and realizing like, oh yeah, there's all sorts of bodily reactions to traumatic events, and all of them are okay. They're all fine. They're all normal, and helping kind of both myself understand that and helping other people understand that really just kind of destigmatizes some of the the just like the shame and confusion that can come in those moments. And yeah, Hakomi especially also has been a big one for me. Just kind of helping me work with my own nervous system and presence as a therapist, helping me slow down, helping me really kind of listen and attune in different ways. So like Tad was saying, so you catch those moments of like, oh, you're looking over here when you talk about this, or when you said this thing, your body relaxed or your body kind of braced, right? So kind of learning how to be quiet enough in here so that you can pick up what's happening in the other person. And honestly, the most formative thing that I did was become a client of a somatic therapist. It's the internal education that you get some of in these training programs because they're generally experiential training programs. But I don't think there's a substitute for just doing your own work in a somatically oriented way if this is what you're interested in.
I didn't want to jump in if Amara is here. I definitely want her. She. Uh,
Yeah, she's having some technical difficulties, so I'm actually like working with her in real time trying to figure that
Sounds good.
out.
I
So
didn't want to.
yeah.
I wanted to make
No.
sure that you had space here as well. So, it's lovely again to be here, to be able to meet with y'all, and again to hear everybody's perspective because I feel like I could have said exactly what Zach said, which is kind of cool, which is wonderful, and getting to know people and getting to know their work. So yes, I agree with the UT. I loved my time there and it at least during my time, it's been a while, but it was a very generalist degree, and it is the starting point. And you get to choose your own adventure, which again can be frustrating, as Zach spoke to, but can be wonderful. It depends on how you are going into those experiences. So that's why I love that we're talking about this because I wish somebody I've been able I have a friend who's a professor at UT as well, and I've spoken to her class about brain spotting as well. I wish somebody had talked to me about any of the somatic therapies, even though they were a little bit younger back then, but just the idea that we can bring these in. So I think that having the background, again, it opens up that possibility. With training, it is experiential, so it's brain spotting is pretty quick to at least get in the door, see if it's a good fit. So we usually do 3-day trainings, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. And it is didactic. Let's learn about it, what's going on in the nervous system, where it came from, why it is. And then it's jumping in and watching demos of a therapist work with another therapist on an issue and getting to watch that for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then getting to debrief on that and then go in and practice and do your own work. So you get to be the therapist and the client practicing those setups. And so I love that. If I had known that ahead of time, I might not have done brain spotting because my own anxiety at that point, having not done anxiety or not done brain spotting and not done my psychedelic work, my anxiety was a lot higher than I think I even knew it was. And I think we have that in our clients. We just get stuck in that hyper or hypo responses in our nervous systems and don't realize that we're even in those places. So having that opportunity to actually be with it, if you would have told me, again, I often say I'm from Boulder, but I'm not from Boulder, meaning the idea that I listen to bilateral music, I'm looking at a stick, I'm going internal. There's no way I would have thought like, what the heck are we doing? I didn't go to grad school to do this, right? I'm supposed to be the expert here, and I'm supposed to guide, and I'm supposed to be the person, right? In that way, and that's what I love about somatic work is I'm there with you, and I can guide if I need to lightly. But our one of the metaphors in brain spotting is being in the tail of the comet, and our client is the comet, and they're leading it, and we're just there to support them, right? And so I love that level of work, and I think the background in social work also allows us to know that power differential. We want to meet our clients as closely as we can meet them in those moments. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Myra, if you're able to jump in, just jump in whenever you can. But we're gonna keep it moving. Um, were were there moments in your training or early career where you felt tension between somatic approach and a more conventional conventional clinical expectations, and how did you navigate that?
Sure, I'll jump in real quick. So, working in hospice, I worked at two different hospices for about 10 years. When I learned phase one, brain spotting, that 3D training I talked about, I came back in, was very excited, and I know myself, if I don't utilize something, it's easy for me to go, oh, that was a nice novel experience, and then it kind of dissipates. So I definitely wanted to utilize it. And my supervisor at the time was lovely, but was very clinically based and not wanting to think outside the box. So she wasn't comfortable with me utilizing it. And so I didn't because I'm a rule follower, or at least was more of one back then. And I almost lost it and would have let go. But I went to lunch with some people that were brain spotting therapists, and they were positive and encouraging. So anyway, all that to say, I butted up against, no, we don't know what that is exactly. I don't know that you should do that. And then I have a more modern, more updated version for myself in my performance work. Like I said, I work with a lot of athletes. I was just working with the college baseball player this morning. I work with a lot of baseball because of the yips and struggles. So I work with a lot of MLB players. And one of the things that ends up happening a lot is going to like conferences. The big one is AASP, the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, and they're lovely. And I love other modalities. There's many other modalities I utilize, like ACT is a big one, and IFS is a big one that I utilize. So I love other modalities as well. But it's always interesting going in there and talking about somatic work, even in athletes who are in their bodies all the time. And I get one or two responses. They'll look at me, look at that I do performance brain spotting work, and I get a lot of really interesting questions. Tell me more about that. That sounds interesting. I've done that, or somebody I knew did that, or so there's real interest. Or they look at me and kind of pat me on the head and say, "Oh, that's cute." Where you don't have the litany of studies that CBT does, and so it definitely butts up against it. And I used to be something that kind of took away from my experience of my own thing that I love and that I've seen work in the counseling room a million times. But now I kind of like being the outside person, and I believe that all these somatic therapies really are the wave of the future. I mean, I think they're the wave of now, but I really do believe more and more this is where we do the real work is in the body. So.
My answer is pretty short on this one, which is really no. I was lucky that I landed in an internship that really supported and understood somatic work and could also like kind of people who could also see that like, oh, I had my own background in this that could be an asset to somatic work. So I was really encouraged rather than blocked from doing somatic work. So, for me, the only tension came with my own competency and skill level with it. And, looking back, there are a lot of things I would have done differently um, at that time, but no one was asking me what is this or stop doing this. It was like, great, this is what you're passionate about. Find a way to ethically bring it in to this work.
Thank you. And I'm going to add, Myra added into the chat. I am grateful that providing or proving somatic experiencing has been well received at the different places I have worked in, working with younger kids in K through 12. I did notice taking more time in educating families and helping them track the sensation for their kids. I felt like I could be more creative, and that was fun. All right, thank you. Um, and for students who feel drawn to this work, but they don't know where to start yet, like what is one concrete first step that you would, recommend?
Can you
I don't
hear
know.
me, Erin?
Yes.
Ah, so maybe if I leave
Yay.
my camera off, my volume maybe likes it better. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, I
No,
think
no
for me,
worries.
one of the things that I would highly recommend is I'm a big believer of mentorship, finding yourself a mentor. Find yourself someone that has experience with somatic experiencing. Reach out, ask questions, ask if they could be your mentor, right? Just reaching out, not being shy about it. And also like seeing if that is a possibility, or if you're a student, finding out if CMHC has any SE practitioners there, where if you can get connected with an SE practitioner that you can do your own work with that way you're getting familiar. I would also recommend Peter Levine and Maggie Klein. They have a lot of amazing books on somatic experiencing. And so just reading more about it, finding a good mentor, doing your own work, that's a great way to just start learning more about it and getting your feet wet with this information.
Thank you.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, I'm a broken record, but I think the biggest piece is do your own work and work with your own nervous system and body, kind of on the therapy level, ideally, at least for me, but also kind of like along the lines of what Mary was saying, just follow your own interests and then find the trainings, find the people who are in this town. And I mean, now it's not even, we're not limited to geography anymore for better or worse, especially for somatic work. I really miss in-person somatic trainings. They don't happen as much anymore. But as a student, I saved probably thousands of dollars and got into a bunch of different trainings just by emailing someone and being like, "I'm enthusiastic about this. Let me in. I'll register people. I'll do dishes." You know, we're generally as therapists, it's like we want to include people we want to help, sometimes at our own financial expense, for better or worse. But your own enthusiasm and desire and self-directed learning energy will can get you really far into these trainings just by asking. Same for therapy, right? Like contact therapists, ask for sliding scale, see if there's anyone who can work with your budget that will allow you to kind of to do your own embodied version of this work. And then the last piece, kind of book recommendations. Yeah, Peter Levine and Maggie Klein are both amazing. I really like Stephen Porges and Deb Dana, who focus on something called polyvagal theory, which is essentially kind of a more contemporary exploration of how the nervous system works. I could say Deb Dana translates Stephen Porges' science speak into practical application. So her book Anchored is a great kind of introduction to your body and nervous system, and then she has therapy specific books as well.
Like I said, it's wonderful to be here and to talk about this stuff because I could echo all of the same. I love the doing your own work. It is huge. I think even when I'll go in and do brain spotting my own work sometimes for a while, and then I'll take breaks. And I notice when I do my own work, it helps me be that much more connected to the work and know even in the silence, because there's a lot of silence often in brain spotting and other somatic works, that it's working, right? That part of me that goes, oh no, gets to be quieted or more intuitive. So I think again that recommendation probably is the biggest one. Not I love Peter Levine's work. He used to live in Lyons, Colorado, which is about 20 minutes down the road from me. And Waking the Tiger is definitely one of the books that I resonated with quite a bit. There's Brain Spotting, just the book by David Grand. Dr. David Grand is the one who developed Brain Spotting. Super easy book. Great place to start. There's another one called The Power of Brain Spotting, which I love as well, because each chapter has a different subject matter in which you can do brain spotting. So grief work, working in sports, working with children, working in groups. It can be a really good thing to look at as we were talking about as you're starting your journey into the career field. You can see where some of these somatic things can specifically work really well with you. I would agree totally. I'm happy to be a resource to anybody that might be interested in brain spotting. I believe that's a part of the work that I do, not only as a social worker, but just as a person wanting to be able to promote things that work beautifully and work well. So happy to be of contact. On the board of the thing called the Rocky Mountain Brain Spotting Institute, where we raise funds for people who can't afford brain spotting work, but also just getting the word out. So again, feel free to contact me. And if you're a current student, you get half off trainings. So take advantage. I always, whenever I'm chatting with anybody, heck yeah, why not? And it's not that expensive. Easy for me to say, but it really is at a pretty reasonable price, especially at that half off price. So definitely worth doing that. So yeah.
Well, thank you all. I'm going to jump to our questions in the chat. So going back to the very beginning, there's a question for Zach. For clients that may have experiences that are similar to your own, how do you handle possibly being brought back to that traumatic place yourself?
I'm a broken record. It's like just doing your own work, getting familiar with the kind of the edges of your own experience and what is difficult for you, and just doing your best to regulate when that happens, right? It's not a bad thing that it happens. It's just your body is giving you information around what is challenging for you, and so your responsibility from there is to get support, whether it's just peer support, consultation, therapy support. But that's it's giving you amazing information about what will help you support this person better and where the barriers lie.
I would totally
Okay.
agree with Zach as well that the doing your own work is a major piece, and also the consultation. If you have that opportunity where you're in a workplace that you have other staff members that you can consult with, if you have a supervisor, or finding yourself a supervisor that you can talk about it. And I think that first thing of the recognition, the awareness of this is happening, and really just sitting with that, right? That you are human, that it is normal, and the most important thing is addressing it, being with it, talking to someone about it, so that it doesn't interfere with the work that you're doing with your clients.
Ooh, and I'm gonna add to that again here because for students, especially for the master students who are in um, internship setting right now, like at this moment, you can ask yourself, "Oh, do I feel safe with my supervisor? Like they may be competent, but you also might not feel actually comfortable and trusting of them to bring up an issue like this." And so this is a great example of somatic work in progress of like, oh yeah, of course I would bring this up to my supervisor if I said this, or and for very good reason. Some of you might be like, I would absolutely never say this to my supervisor because not all supervisors are either very good or equipped to handle something like this. And so that is a good indication of like, okay, if you're not getting support there, then it's okay to not bring it there if it doesn't feel safe or you don't feel like you'll be supported, but you have to bring it somewhere in order to skillfully work through it.
All right. And another question is, have you all found somatic therapy to be beneficial for those with chronic illnesses or pain?
I'll jump in and just say, love this question, and like any of the questions, they're great, and I want to be careful how I answer in the sense of folks that are usually going through chronic pain or chronic illness have been over medicalized or mismedicalized or assumed it's all in their head, or there can be so many different parts that people come to assumptions with folks. So the answer is yes. I've definitely seen the way that people relate to their body can be very different. The way they relate to that nobody believed me can be very different. The way that people can process around pain being experienced in the body can have a very similar and work on the same nervous system as pain from an emotional level. So that is the sort of thing can be processed. So absolutely, it's not only like, and that's not what the question was either, but sometimes people can say, well, basically, is the relief of the pain or the chronic illness? Yes, there can be some of that, but it also can be have all the other psychological and emotional areas that somebody has had to go through because of having chronic pain and chronic illness that often can be processed very beautifully. So.
Yeah, just echoing that. It's not a blanket um, kind of all chronic pain will be healed by somatic work, but I mean a lot of pain in my kind of opinion slash um, kind of specialty is kind of unacknowledged and kind of essentially like trapped traumatic activation in our bodies. And when it's not able to move outward, it plants and burrows into our bodies and causes stomach aches, nausea, back pain. And so generally, my focus isn't explicitly on the chronic pain, but as someone's kind of nervous system learns how to regulate itself and they learn to get their needs met in different ways, they might notice a difference in either their pain levels or how they relate to the pain.
Okay, another question. How do you assess progress or change when using somatic methods, especially when change may be subtle or gradual? What inspired you to incorporate somatic practices? Well, those are multiple questions. Let's just focus on that first one. So, like, how do you assess progress or change in your practice with a client?
I think you can do it through traditional methods of looking at different assessment scales, obviously with anxiety or depression. That's not normally what I utilize unless it makes sense for the client, so I'm more than up for that. But I guess I look at it through the frame of let's be subtle, let's notice. And some people, I mean, to be honest, some of this work is like huge and it's big and you get to see this like amazing stuff happen in 30 minutes and it really can be it's you can be in awe of watching people as they process and go into and work through stuff. And as I tell people, it can be chipping away at the big block, right? Especially if we're talking about chronic early life developmental traumas. Sometimes it's about just chipping away at it, and we'll have an aha moment, or we'll have a relief or a release that will come. But either one is invited, either one is here, and although you might want the one, that's understandable, but the other one has great value. Just as if we did our more cognitive work, we'd hopefully see that. Same here. I think I heard Zach say it before too. We can be lightly goal oriented, very lightly, because I say your midbrain and your body don't care about our goals. And so I don't want to put that frame on them. So just noticing, oftentimes I'll say, what are you noticing? Hey, when you walk in and you have anxiety, I noticed when you've been talking about it, you don't tell me about how you look for the exit sign. Have you noticed that? Oh, I guess I haven't looked for the exit sign. Oh my gosh, that kind of feels relieving as you say that. Yeah, I feel it still at a 6 out of 10. It's not better, but oh, okay, I'm not noticing that. Or how are other people, our significant others or friends, what might they be noticing? And oftentimes it's that before they even notice it of themselves. Sometimes it's other people that will report back to them that I'm noticing this of you. So really keeping our ears open to all experiences for feedback.
And Myra dropped in the chat, seeing a change in their awareness and ability to connect and engage, behaviors that they were not able to do, and seeing the shift, hearing them talk about naming their triggers, sensations, and naming how they are making and holding space for those experiences. Um, we have one more question, and then we'll wrap things up. It was part of that group of questions. Um, How do you ensure cultural sensitivity and appropriateness when working with diverse clients through somatic methods?
I'm glad that someone asked this question because there was a question on our panel sheet that related to kind of power, consent, safety, things like that. And I feel like this fits well into it. And I mean, there's so many different pieces of it. But I think a big piece of it is just kind of naming it when appropriate. It's like, oh, like I'm a white man. You're coming to me as like what is just that piece of data do for your nervous system? Like, does that make you comfortable because I'm familiar and relatable? Does that make you does that activate your nervous system because of your history with men or white men, kind of whatever it is? But just being curious and bringing it out into the open once it's safe, once you kind of get a sense of attunement for that person is might be kind of able to have that conversation and won't be more dysregulating for them. And since kind of power and consent comes in here as well, I think a lot of the pieces are kind of like listening. Well, one, kind of really equalizing the power dynamics of like I have my skills and expertise in some way, but I'm also just a guy at the tail end of this comet, kind of helping you move where you want to go. And like my goals and desires for you don't really matter. And this is about kind of wherever you want to go. And so when balancing that with kind of, holding power as a therapist, a lot of times it's looking for consent in someone's body versus what they say to you. Because I can say, hey, do you want to try this thing that, might be difficult for you? And they'll be like, yeah, okay. And I'll have to pause and ask like, okay, your mouth said yes, and your body did something different. And so like do it's educating like, no, you get to control what kind of experience you have in this space. And if there's something that for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable doing, you get to say that and have ownership over your own healing process. Like, I don't know what will be best for you. So we get to kind of learn that together.
And Myra dropped in the chat, being honest, if not familiar with something they bring up, and inviting them to let me know or share what they feel is important for me to know. Also, opening the space with curiosity. If it's going to have we're not going to have all the answers, and that's okay. And together we can learn and see what works best. And then, Thad, did you want to add something? I saw you unmute.
I know we're at time, but I guess I could echo all of that. Curiosity, owning who I am. I'm a white straight male, so calling that out, being with somebody, allowing them space. What does that bring up? What is it like to notice that we are trying to have the power be equal and shared power? And that's the beauty in somatics as well. As long as, like you said, there is consent, that I'm reading consent. How can I help you be prepared? How can I also say that we don't ever need to do this if that's not something that's appropriate for you? And then when we go into it, how can I inform you to the best of my ability? And then when we're processing what comes out of it, how can I help support you? But again, looking at it, that's what the beauty. If I'm following you, it's hard for me to have too much more, at least overt power in those relationships. Not to say there can't be some underlying, but looking at those and trying to work with it. So again, calling it out, that's why I think it's a great question. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we're at time, but just like one last like one word answer. If there is something you want students to carry with them from this discussion, if you could just put out one word, what would it be?
Curiosity, and I'll do a sentence. Like, get into somatic work. It is awesome. I can't tell you how much more confident I feel in the work that I get to do with people because of doing somatic work as a part of what I do.
Yeah, one word is hard. Um, what Tad
Yeah,
said,
I'll
and
give you a sentence.
yeah, uh, like follow your own enthusiasm, um, and and okay, I'm really cheating. Follow your own enthusiasm, do your own work, and also like this is a way for your own growth to be directly injected into the therapy process because you can't learn this work without transforming as a person.
And Myra put in the chat insertion of time, allowing yourself time. Okay, so thank you all so much for your time, your expertise, and just sharing your journey in this work. I think everyone kind of dropped their contact information in the chat, but I'm happy to email any of our participants the contact information of our panelists so you can reach out to them because that's what what we do these workshops for, so that offer you a resource through our amazing alumni. Thank you, Zach, and thank you, Myra. I'm so sorry, like you were struggling with your audio. That happens to me all the time with Zoom specifically. And yeah, thank you all so much. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. And yeah, this closes out our career exploration workshop for the year. So wishing you all that are graduating an amazing graduation and the best of your future endeavors in social work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Y'all, it's great.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.